Anna darted out of the house, her trembling hands clutching her thin coat tightly against the icy wind that roared across the fields. She barely felt the cold, her focus fixed solely on the barn ahead. The surrounding darkness pressed in like a heavy shroud, broken only by the faint, inviting glow of a lantern swaying outside the barn. It cast an unsteady light, like a beacon calling her forward. She skidded to a halt in front of the massive wooden door, her heart racing so furiously it felt as though it might tear free from her chest. Inside, the deliberate shuffle of hooves echoed softly, almost rhythmically, as though the horse within knew she was coming, perhaps had been waiting for her all along. Anna pushed the door open, the groan of its hinges cutting through the oppressive silence. Inside, the barn air felt thick, weighted with an unspoken significance. Standing at the center was Stellan, regal and unmoving, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "You were waiting for me, weren't you?" she murmured, her voice trembling, barely more than a whisper. The words didn't feel like a question, it was almost a confession. Stellan tilted his head slightly, a subtle motion that somehow felt like an answer. His gaze, profound and steady, seemed to hold a depth of understanding that startled Anna, leaving her rooted to the spot. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, truly understood, something she hadn't felt in her life with Lucas. Emotion surged through her like a tidal wave, compelling and dangerous, comforting yet terrifying. She took a slow step forward, extending her hand towards Stellan. Her fingers brushed his mane, warm and alive beneath her touch. A current of energy raced down her spine, as the connection between them solidified in an instant. This was it. Something had shifted irrevocably. Her life would never be the same. The wind outside screamed in protest, but Anna no longer heard it. The world she left behind faded into nothingness. For now, there was only Stellan, the warmth of his presence, and the burgeoning truth threading its way unspoken between them. Through the shadows, like a flame ready to ignite, Anna stood still in the barn. Her hand rested softly on Stell's mane, her gaze distant, lost in a void only she could see. She closed her eyes and drew in a deep breath, the scent of dry hay, damp earth, and the warm breath of the silent horse beside her filling her lungs. For a moment in this tranquil space, she felt a fleeting escape from it all. The cold, hollow house, Lucas's vacant stairs, and the suffocating loneliness that had consumed her soul for what felt like an eternity. Memories washed over her like a tide impossible to resist. There was once a time when Anna believed that love could overcome anything. She and Lucas had been unstoppable, like two flames burning brightly in unison. She recalled the first time they met, the way Lucas's wit and charm had made her laugh until tears of joy streamed down her face. She remembered those long, cozy evenings by the fire, sharing dreams of a future glowing with possibility. Back then, Lucas had made promises that seemed as enduring as the stars, vowing to always stand by her side and build a life they'd both treasure. But promises have a way of drifting out of reach. Over the years, Lucas had buried himself in his work, disappearing into endless meetings and business trips that seemed to stretch indefinitely. Their shared moments had faded into nothing but distant recollections, replaced by hurried meals and conversations cut short by the relentless buzz of his phone. Each return home felt like welcoming a stranger. Lucas would walk in, drop his bag, offer a fleeting hug, and retreat behind the glow of his laptop screen. Anna had tried. Oh, she had tried with all her heart. But with each passing day, she couldn't help but wonder if the love they once believed could conquer everything had quietly slipped away, leaving only shadows where fire once burned. Anna had tried everything: romantic dinners, revisiting old conversations. But Lucas always brushed her off with the same tired phrase, "I'm too tired, Anna. Can we talk later?" But later never came. She once believed that time could heal their marriage, but instead, it only deepened the gulf between them. Lucas wasn't a bad man. He wasn't unfaithful, angry, or outwardly neglectful. But his indifference made Anna feel invisible, like a ghost slowly fading within her own home. When Lucas bought Stellin, Anna thought it was just another one of his passing interests. But for her, Stellin became a lifeline in the monotony of her days. The horse's deep, soulful eyes were a source of calm Anna hadn't felt in years. Yet it wasn't just Stellin that lingered in her mind. She couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn, the enigmatic horse trainer Lucas hired. Evelyn was a commanding presence, sharp-eyed with an aura of quiet sorrow that suggested she carried her own scars. She spoke sparingly, but when she did, her words struck with piercing clarity. Anna recalled one particular afternoon by the barn, discussing Stellan. Evelyn had looked at her, her gaze cutting through Anna's carefully constructed walls, and said something that stayed with her long after their conversation ended. You know, Evelyn had said, horses like Stellan can sense what humans refuse to admit. Sometimes, loneliness forges the strongest bonds. At the time, Anna had dismissed it with a polite smile. But now, standing before Stellan, Evelyn's words echoed in her mind, a prophecy she hadn't wanted to believe. Was it loneliness, the hollow ache Lucas couldn't fill, that drew her closer to Stellan? Brushing her hand through Stellan's mane, Anna felt the warmth of the horse beneath her palm. You know, Stellan, she whispered, her voice barely audible, sometimes I wish I could be like you. No worries, no fights, just freedom. Stellan, of course, didn't respond, but his steady, knowing gaze seemed to offer an unspoken understanding. For a moment, Anna felt something she hadn't in years, a fleeting sense of peace, a sense of relief washed over her, though deep inside, Anna knew everything was changing, and there was no going back. The moonlight stretched across the fields, illuminating the narrow path to the barn. Step by step, she walked slowly, as though an unseen force drew her towards Stellan. The wind picked up, sharper and colder, but she didn't care. Something inside her stirred, a tempest, both faint and overwhelming, her heart yearning for something her mind couldn't quite grasp. The barn door creaked open, the hinges groaning into the stillness of the night. There he was, Stellan, his dark, shadowy eyes reflecting the moonlight. For a moment, Anna felt the weight of the world dissolve. Lucas was gone. All the cold, distant phone calls and lonely evenings melted away. It was just her and Stellan, as though they belonged to each other in a way words could never explain. You were waiting for me, weren't you? She whispered, her voice trembling like a stolen secret. She stepped closer, her hand brushing against Stellan's sleek black mane. His warm breath puffed softly against her skin, a silent, soothing reassurance. She stroked him gently, her fingers gliding over the smooth strands of his coat. The heaviness in her chest began to ease, replaced by a calm so unfamiliar that it almost felt foreign. And then, without knowing why, the moment shifted. Perhaps it was the way Stellan's eyes held hers or the slight tilt of his head, like an acknowledgement of her touch. Or maybe it was the storm inside her, the loneliness, the unspoken yearning, the emptiness she couldn't seem to fill. Her hand stilled on the side of his face, her palm pressing softly against his warmth. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, though even that breath wavered. Stellan, she murmured, his name falling from her lips like a quiet confession. The horse shifted slightly, lowering his head in what felt like understanding. He stood still, motionless yet brimming with a quiet intelligence that made Anna feel as if he could see right into her soul. His gaze met hers, deep, unjudging, and asking for nothing. Yet she couldn't tear her eyes away. Her breathing quickened, the magnetic pull of his presence drawing her closer still. The space between them felt like an insurmountable chasm, a silence heavy with anticipation stretching out between them. Anna's hand rested on Stell's chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat grounding her, while her own heart raced, chaotic and wild, threatening to unravel any semblance of composure she had left. For the first time in forever, she stopped thinking. Logic, morality, reason, all the voices that usually guided her, had vanished, leaving only the raw, unfiltered tide of emotions she had suppressed for far too long. One small step forward, a slight tilt of her head, and Anna's world shattered. She wasn't the tired, hollow version of herself anymore. She was alive, consumed by feelings she didn't recognize. But then, a faint sound broke the spell. Anna jerked back as the barn door creaked open, a dim light slicing through the darkened space. Her breath caught. Evelyn stood in the doorway, her sharp gaze cutting into Anna like a blade. She didn't need to say a word. Anna knew she'd seen everything. The air felt heavy, frozen in time, as Evelyn's expression morphed into a mix of surprise and icy calculation. Anna opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her breath clouded the chilly air, holding secrets she desperately wished to deny. Shame, guilt, and fear clawed at her, but buried deep beneath it all, she felt an unsettling sense of relief. Relief that her secret was no longer hers alone to carry. Anna, Evelyn's voice shattered the silence, calm but laced with unrelenting authority. What do you think you're doing? Evelyn stepped forward, her movements deliberate, each step tightening the pressure in the barn. Anna stumbled back, her thoughts a whirlwind of panic, while Stell remained still, an unmoving anchor in the storm. I don't know, Anna stammered, her voice barely audible as it trembled with emotion. Evelyn stopped just short of Anna, her piercing gaze cutting through her defenses. Do you understand where this is heading? Evelyn's voice was low, each word deliberate and sharp. You're playing with fire, Anna. Once it burns, there will be nothing left to salvage. Anna couldn't find the strength to deny it. She stood frozen, suffocated by the storm of emotions swirling within her. Evelyn was right. She knew the truth in those words. But that knowledge wasn't enough to stop her. Not anymore. She had already crossed the line, the point of no return. Evelyn, unmoving and resolute, held firm. Her words carried the weight of gravity, her presence like a mirror forcing Anna to confront her actions. Did you really think this would stay a secret? Evelyn asked, her voice dangerously composed. Did you think no one would notice the change in you? The way your eyes give you away every time you leave this barn? Anna staggered back, her hand instinctively clutching Stell's mane, as if seeking safety. But there was no escape, not from Evelyn's searing gaze, and not from the truth. The only thing holding Anna together felt like it had suddenly unraveled. Stellin, the horse she once believed understood her better than anyone, now stood motionless, a silent, distant figure. No movement, no sound, just a presence that felt unreachable. I didn't mean to, Anna croaked, her voice raw and strained. The words felt hollow, powerless to bridge the chasm between her and Evelyn. She couldn't argue with what Evelyn had witnessed, yet she also couldn't describe the storm of emotion raging inside her. Shame, anger, and something desperate swirled together, a whirlwind she couldn't resist. Evelyn's response came sharp and bitter, a biting laugh that cut through Anna's feeble explanation. Didn't mean to, Evelyn echoed, disbelief lacing her voice. Anna, this isn't something that just happened. This is a choice, and you know exactly what you're doing. The words struck Anna with the force of a blow, but they didn't bring clarity or regret. Instead, they pushed her closer to the edge of her own inner chaos. The storm inside her grew. Raw shame collided with fierce anger and a deep, unyielding loneliness. Why do you care? Anna's voice rose, almost a shout, fractured and trembling. This is my life. You have no idea what I've been through. You don't know how lonely I am. Evelyn's expression didn't waver. You're right. I don't know everything, she said, her tone calm but laden with weight. But I do know this. You're destroying yourself. And not just yourself. Everyone around you. Anna froze, raw and exposed under Evelyn's piercing gaze. Stellan's haunting silence loomed behind her, the very embodiment of all the justifications and excuses she clung to now rendered meaningless. She was trapped, consumed by emotions she couldn't control. Lucas will never understand, Anna whispered, her voice breaking as she looked away, her gaze drawn to the shafts of moonlight slipping through the barn's slats. He's never understood me. Not really. And that's why you're doing this, Evelyn replied, stepping closer, her voice softer now, but no less resolute. Anna, I'm not here to judge you, but you need to understand. This won't bring you what you're looking for. It won't set you free. It'll only make things worse. Anna wanted to fight back, to reject Evelyn's words. Yet the truth in them clung to her, undeniable and suffocating. She had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The spell of tension shattered with a sudden noise. The beam of car headlights cut through the dark, slicing across the field and spilling into the barn. Anna froze, her head whipping toward the sound. Her chest tightened as the light illuminated the barn walls. Lucas, fear swept over her, turning her blood cold as she stood, rooted to the spot. Evelyn's gaze softened, a spark of something like sympathy burning in her sharp eyes. "You need to decide," Evelyn said quietly, stepping back to leave a space between them. "Right now, face what you've done or sink deeper into this mess." Anna's breathing quickened as Lucas's car grew nearer, the headlights casting stark light across her pale face. She felt the secrets she had buried begin to break free, every feeling teetering on the edge of exposure. "Anna," Evelyn said one last time, her voice firm yet gentle. "This is your moment to choose, and only you can make that choice." Anna's gaze darted between Evelyn, Stellan, and the approaching headlights. Her mind churned with chaos, but her heart pounded with a shocking clarity. A beacon cutting through the storm. She had run out of places to hide. The headlights stopped abruptly, casting vivid light on the barn door. Every detail of Anna's face stood in sharp relief, her emotion laid bare against the encroaching shadows. The car door opened and slammed with a decisive thud. Lucas stepped out, his figure tall and steady, his shadow stretching long beneath the harsh glow. "Anna, are you in there?" Lucas called, his voice unshaken, steady as always. Time seemed to pause. Anna trembled, paralyzed between the choice Evelyn offered and the undeniable presence of Lucas. Silence reclaimed the air, broken only by the sound of her own heartbeat. Evelyn waited, watching her with quiet patience, giving her the space to decide. Anna didn't know what she would do, but for the first time she knew one thing with clarity. There was nowhere left to run. Thunder seemed to echo through the silence of the night as Anna looked toward him. Their eyes locked, and in that fleeting moment she knew. Lucas was aware, perhaps not in detail, but enough to sense that something was wrong. Instinct had told him. "I couldn't sleep," Anna said, steadying her voice as best she could, though the tremor in her breath betrayed her calm facade. "I just needed to check on Stellan." Lucas stepped further into the barn, his gaze sweeping from Anna to Evelyn, who stood motionless in the shadows a few steps away. The tension in the room was palpable, unspoken but heavy, and his sharp eyes didn't miss it. His voice broke through the silence. "Is something going on?" Evelyn remained silent, her stillness speaking more than words. Anna knew she wouldn't answer. It was her moment to confront what she had buried for so long. Every escape route had narrowed into this one crossroad. Her secrets weighed on her like chains, and she realized she had a choice: to continue lying or to finally unravel the truth, no matter how much it hurt. She hesitated, glancing at Evelyn, whose calm expression silently urged her to take the leap, and then to Lucas, whose worried yet doubtful eyes pierced her resolve. "Lucas," Anna began, her voice breaking slightly under the weight of her confession. I need to tell you something." Lucas froze, his expression shifting between confusion and concern. But he didn't interrupt. He simply watched her, waiting, as Evelyn stepped slightly back, giving them space but staying present in the quiet of the barn. Anna struggled to gather her thoughts, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. The memories of her own loneliness rushed through her, those fleeting moments with Stell that had offered solace, but also deepened her anguish. The shame and longing she had tried to suppress had now become too much to ignore. She needed to face it. She took a deep breath. "I've been so lonely, Lucas," she admitted, her voice hoarse as tears spilled down her cheeks. "I've felt it for so long, and I don't know how to escape it. Everything between us, it feels like it's lost its meaning." Lucas stood still, processing her words as though trying to piece together a puzzle he didn't realize existed. "What are you saying, Anna?" His voice was low, steady, but burdened with pain. Her voice caught as she continued, forcing herself to confront the truth. I've looked for comfort where I shouldn't have. I've lost my way, Lucas. I crossed a line. For a moment, Lucas seemed to lose his breath. He stepped back, his eyes widening slightly. Crossed a line? He repeated, his voice raw, barely audible. Anna's chest tightened as though the weight of her shame had taken physical form. I can't explain it, she said, her words trembling. I know I've gone too far, and I can't take it back. She braced herself, expecting him to explode with anger or leave immediately, but he simply stood there, silent and searching her tear-streaked face. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with unresolved emotions. Do you still love me, Anna? That question shattered what little strength she had left. Her defenses crumbled completely as she met his gaze. I don't know, Lucas, she confessed, her tears falling freely now. But I want to find it again. I want to understand why we've come to this. Evelyn stayed silent but firm, her quiet presence a witnessing force. Lucas turned without a word, stepping out of the barn into the cold glow of the night. The fading beams of his car's headlights were all that remained as he disappeared. Anna was left standing there, emptier than she had ever felt. Evelyn moved closer, her sharp demeanor softened by a rare hint of kindness. You did the right thing, she said quietly, her voice steady yet compassionate. Anna didn't respond. She turned towards Stellan, who stood patiently, his dark eyes locking onto hers as though they carried the answers she couldn't find within herself. She reached out, running her hand along his mane for what felt like the last time. And in that moment, Anna understood what she needed to do. She had to step out of the shadows, out of the barn that had held her secrets and her shame for so long. The moon hung cold and detached above, casting its pale light over her as she walked into the stillness of the night. The pain, the regret, and the flicker of hope she carried, these became her companions as she took her first steps toward the unknown, toward the chance to find herself again.